guys, I want to do something a little bit different today and do a bit of an editorial on 3 reasons why so many book-to-film adaptations suck. So coming out tomorrow night is The Dark Tower, and all the buzz surrounding it is not so good, not really at all. This movie's kind of had a troubled production all the way up to this point in time, and it's the day before the movie comes out, and there's no score on Rotten Tomatoes. It hasn't been screened for critics, or it's been screened, but there's an embargo still. All those are really bad signs. And just looking at kind of the history of Stephen King books to film adaptations, a lot of them have been pretty bad. Some have been great. A lot of them have not been so great. It kind of begs that question, why is it that it is so difficult to take a great book and turn it into a great movie? And so before I kind of dive into all this, go ahead and give me your reasons down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And actually, this editorial is based off of something I wrote for Men vs. Movies. It's a movie news review site that I write out. The link for it is down below in the comment section. So I actually wrote this first. Most of my stuff I don't write first. I wrote it first. I wanted to do a video version of it and talk about it. Try something different. If you want me to do more editorials like this, go ahead and let me know in the comment section. Also, watch it, share it, all that fun stuff. But let's see if we can get a lively discussion on why is it so difficult to take a great book and turn it into a great movie. With all that said, one of the reasons that Hollywood loves to adapt books into movies is because it's an existing property, and that means the story worked for some group of people. Someone liked it, and therefore we can read the book and go, this story works. And if it's a hit book, there's a built-in audience. So we have a story that works, we have a built-in audience, so we have content that we know we like, and we have a group of people we know we can market to. This is a nice advantage when trying to make a movie that you already have good content and a group of people you want to market to. So naturally, Hollywood is constantly looking for existing properties in books. They're looking for the next hit book. They're looking for the next Hunger Games, Harry Potter, that they can turn into not just a hit book series, but into a hit film series. But as many times as it hits, it feels hard. And sometimes it gets a little bit confusing. So just a few months back, a movie came out called The Circle, which was based off a book called The Circle that's all about social networks and the nature of fame through the internet, reality television, the merging of all these things. So very topical kind of information. And it came out just 6 weeks after Beauty and the Beast, and it stars Emma Watson. So you take a girl kind of at the peak of kind of the spotlight is on her. We're wanting the next thing from her, and she's in this movie called The Circle that's based off a hit book that's on very relevant content. Tom Hanks is also in this movie, so kind of one of the all-time great actors, one of these most beloved guys. You got John Boyega thrown in there as well, so a Star Wars actor. So you got star power, and you got a wave of momentum with Emma Watson kind of at the point in her career when this movie comes out. It's based off of a hit book. The movie only makes $20 million total in the United States. It only makes $30 million worldwide. Stop and think about that. Beauty and the Beast almost made $200 million in its opening weekend in just the United States. It made over $300 million in just the United States. So 10 times as much as this other book. And you go, what's going on here? And beyond that, it only had a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. So people didn't want to go see it. The critics didn't like it. It didn't find its audience at all, even though there was a built-in audience and source material that people resonated with from the get-go. And that's a pretty common story where these books with money behind them, big budgets, star power, talented directors, flop of a movie. Once again, I don't know. Maybe The Dark Tower is going to be incredible. It'll be an amazing movie, and it's going to have 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and make $10 bazillion. That's unlikely because I think I made up that number. But maybe that'll happen. It seems really unlikely, though, and it's probably going to get horrible reviews, have a very mediocre opening weekend, and then fall off the cliff second weekend as no one wants to go see it afterwards, even though it's based off of a great book series from Stephen King. You got some star power in Matthew McConaughey and Idris Elba. Got big budget going into it. It's probably going to do really bad. Why is it? Why is it that Harry Potter can work and other ones don't? And I don't think there's any simple answer because there's nothing simple about any of this. The first reason, reason number one, that it's very difficult to take a great book and turn it into a great movie is that movies are complex and collaborative. It's incredibly difficult to make anything into a great movie. It's incredibly difficult just to make a movie. It has an enormous amount of work that goes into it at an extremely professional level to make any movie, except The Room. There's no professionalism in that. Every other movie requires an extreme amount of professionalism to create this movie, to bring it into existence. So to make a great movie is so difficult. So even with great source material, and I haven't read The Circle to know if it's a great book or not, but a lot of people really liked it, so a lot of people went, that is worth turning into a movie. Even so, making that into a great movie is really difficult. And like I said, movies are very complex and collaborative. Whereas writing a book is, in a lot of ways, fairly simple. Not easy. It's not easy to do. I'm not saying anybody can write a book that's great. No. There's an incredible skill set that comes into constructing a great narrative and converting that into a book. However, the process is a lot simpler. For Stephen King to write a great book, he just needs a great idea and the time to do it because he's already a great author. And maybe throw in the mix, he has to have 3 months that are good at the office. But because he's great at doing it, and at the core of making a Stephen King book is just Stephen King having the time to write it out. In that sense, it's much easier. Now, there's simplifying a little bit, but at the core of writing, it's one person at a keyboard typing until a story comes to completion. Movies are a lot more complex than that, to state the obvious. So even if you remove the complexities of studios, budgets, producers, all of those different elements, and you just go to the core key elements of making a movie. First, a movie has to be great when it's written. The screenwriter has to sit down and write a great script. Then a great director has to have a great time filming that movie. And then the editor has to construct it with excellence. So the movie's written and created 3 different times in the mind of the screenwriter, on the set where it's created by the director and shot, and then in the editing room by the editor. Just on those 3 categories, there's a lot more places where a movie can go wrong, and a lot more ways in which it's far more difficult to take a great idea, even with a great author and a great director, and make it all the way to a great movie. There's just so many more places things can go wrong. And once again, for J.K. Rowling to write a great book, she needs a great idea, the time to do it, and just not have a bad month. For a movie to come into existence, that whole 10-minute list of credits, all those people have to have a good day at the office. Now you can say, the grips don't matter. We can swap out grips. That's fairly simple. Okay, then the director, the writer, the cinematographer, the key actors, the special effects team, the stage designers. There's a bunch of people that can just screw up a movie. So why is it difficult to take a great book and turn it into a great movie? Because it's incredibly difficult to make a great movie, period. It's incredibly complex, and movies are incredibly collaborative, and there's so many places things can go wrong. Sorry for the interruption. I wanted to talk about the single biggest thing you can do to support my channel, and that's to become one of my official patrons by supporting me financially directly on my Patreon page. If you do that, you get kind of special influence into my page in that I ask my patrons every month, what movie would they like me to review? What subject do they want me to address in a video? And essentially they get a personalized video made directly for them each month. I also give them special influence into my future projects I'm working on, give them shout outs, and like in this video right here, I put a list of their names up on the screen because I want to support their channels as well. So if you'd be willing to support my channel because you're a big fan of what we're doing and you want me to continue doing this, please consider supporting me on Patreon. With all that said, let's continue. Reason number 2, it's incredibly difficult to take a great book and turn it into a great movie, is the story. Books in movies tell stories differently. Now, I'm not trying to blow your mind here, but books in movies are different. You, of course, know that. That's not like, whoa, how did you come up with this great, brilliant insight? But we have to stop and think about it, that while a great story is a great story, the method by which we communicate that story shapes the quality of the story. It shapes the experience of that story. And you just stop and think about the nature of a book is that one person creates words that pretty much exclusively, a book involves someone reading words and then their mind creating the images inside their head. It's an active process of the reader or hearer, if it's an audiobook, hearing words and a world being created inside of their mind. And also the nature of a book is that they're much, much longer. They're not intended, for the most part, to be consumed in a single sitting. So I looked it up. The audiobook for The Circle is over 10 hours long. The audiobook for several Stephen King novels is over 40 hours long. The assumption is that a book will be consumed over a matter of days, weeks, maybe even months if it's one of these, The Stand and it's 1,000 pages long. There's no assumption that the whole thing will be consumed in one bit, and so therefore it's broken up into chunks, chapters, that there's somewhat of assumption that you'll consume those in certain level of regiments, but they're constructed differently, and that changes the way a story is consumed and the way it's constructed and meant to be experienced. However, with a movie, the cinematic experience is intended to be a passive experience where a story is interpreted for you and put on screen in front of you with images, sound, music, and you take it in as it's presented and interpreted for you, which is very different from I create the story in my mind. And the assumption is with a movie that you're watching it in one sitting. So the average movie length is around 2 hours long. A lot of these blockbusters these days are over 2 hours. Most comedies are about 1 hour and 40 minutes. But they're in somewhat that ballpark where you can sit there, consume the whole thing in one sitting. Therefore, the nature of the pacing of it is very different. You're not putting stopping points in it. It needs to flow from beginning to end. Your starting point is the movie starts, the end point is the credits start rolling, unless it's a Marvel movie and you sit through all the credits to the final post-credit scene. That's a very different experience from a book where the assumption is you'll read one chapter, you'll read 2 chapters, and then there's pausing points. This changes storytelling. A great story is a great story, but storytelling is changed radically based off the way you're assuming of how much you're going to consume in a single setting. Are there on-ramps or are there off-ramps? Movies, not really. Beginning and end. Books, absolutely. There are all sorts of points for you to come and go throughout the entire process. Likewise, the nature of a book is that you can hear the thoughts of characters. You know what they're feeling, and that's articulated in a way that you can just write what they're feeling, because everything we experience about them, we're reading what it is and interpreting all of the meaning of all of that. And so that gives you different perspectives on the way stories are told and structured when their emotions can be communicated in certain sort of ways. Their thoughts can be communicated via words. In movies, it's far more limited in how you can communicate the thoughts of what someone's thinking, because you can do some voiceover to do that, but you can only do so much of that before it gets kind of weird. Certain movies can pull it off easier than others, and certain movies, it doesn't really fit very well at all because it's intended to be a visual storytelling format, and it has its own tricks and tactics to it that don't translate all that well to books. So I'm a huge Jackie Chan fan. A book adaptation of a Jackie Chan movie wouldn't make any sense because an advantage of visual storytelling is the excitement from actually seeing a human being doing certain things, or the emotion that can be evoked through music that you can't do with a book. But with books, there's other tricks, tools that they have. And so they create different things. As an example of this, a book that my wife really liked is called The Host by Stephanie Meyer, the Twilight author lady. So she had another book called The Host. My wife thoroughly enjoyed it. Listened to the audiobook many times, read through the book many times. There's several years there, it seemed like she's just kept rereading through this book. Then the movie came out. It was dreadful, and she hated it. And it's not like it was just a horrible adaptation of the story. The problem was the nature of the book, The Host, is it's kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers type stuff, where there's human hosts, hence the host, that have aliens inside of them. And the way the book works is that the human still is there, cognizant in their mind, but the alien is putting thoughts in their mind as well. So in the cartoons, kind of like you got the angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other. That's kind of the way this book works, in that you've got these two voices inside the same body, the alien and the human, kind of conversing back and forth. In a book, you can do that without it being too weird and crazy, and you can do it creates an interesting dialogue about things. When you're watching a movie and there's just like a voice going, I think we should go left. And then the person says out loud, no, we should go right. And they start debating back and forth. It's ludicrous. I mean, it was like, I couldn't believe what I was watching when we finally sat down to watch this movie. And it's because the nature of books versus film, they have different things that work for each one of them. Likewise, to throw kind of another storytelling format in the book, like comic books and graphic novels, there are pictures placed on a screen or placed in a comic book or graphic novel, specifically framed a specific way based on the idea that I turn pages, and when I turn a page, there'll be one image right here that I see, or maybe three right here, and the way that they're broken up, the information that you get with each page turn is a unique element that you can have while reading a graphic novel, and you can put additional elements in there that are unique to this storytelling format. That's one of the reasons why for years and years and years people said you couldn't do an adaptation of Watchmen, because when it was crafted, it was designed to be the best version of what this storytelling tactic can be. It's meant to use it to its fullest, using all these specific, unique tactics of a graphic novel, and those don't translate to a movie. And so when they tried to do some of that stuff, that's why there's like 3 different editions of Watchmen trying to like incorporate this tale of the Black Freighter and all sorts of stuff, because different storytelling formats have different tools that you can use and different advantages. Why do I say all this? Because the things that make something a great book and make a story work and make certain characters resonate can be due to the storytelling combined with the story. The two things go together very nicely to create a very specific experience in a book that you can't just translate over to a movie. You have to inherently simplify it. You have to condense it. You have to take characters and merge them together. You have to create a pacing that can be done in 2 hours or maybe 3 hours if you get a big epic. But it changes all of the way these things work. And so what makes this work and the way the story is consumed is radically different, which makes for a frustrating situation for our third reason, and that is the audience. A book to movie adaptation has 2 audiences, therefore it kind of has 2 goals. So once again, stating the obvious, the reason that you're converting a book into a movie partially is because there's a built-in audience. There's people that already love the book and therefore might be interested in seeing a movie version of it. So there's an audience that the studio can market directly to. But the other reason that they're making a book into a movie is because they think, hey, we can take this story and take it to a broad, wider audience. All the people that love movies, we can take it to them as well in these new groups of people. Inherently, that means we're trying to appeal to a new group of people and an old group of people, a group of established audience members and an established group of new audience members. And this leads to 2 different goals, because you're trying to make a movie that appeals to these people while being faithful to what worked before. And that's really difficult to do, because in order to take a story told in a literary format, you have to adapt and translate it to make it into a film, and changes have to be made. The existing fan base wants it to be faithful to the original. So some people just want a basic, essentially you just take the book, use that as the script, make a movie out of it. And if you can't do that, if that doesn't translate, maybe you shouldn't make a movie out of this book. And that's a pretty fair argument if you want to be faithful and true to your book. Other people would say, no, make a great movie out of it. Because we're trying to make a movie, we're taking the source material, so just make a great movie. Okay, but there's still a bunch of people that want you to be faithful to their story and don't want you changing a bunch of things. So you're trying to be faithful for the existing audience, and you're trying to make a great movie for the new audience, and this turns into kind of competing goals. With any movie, as they're starting off, as you're trying to adapt something, sorry about that. As they're trying to adapt something, the director and producers have to make choices as to how faithful they want to try to be to the book and adapting it to the screen. So some movies, right off the bat, they decide we're going to be extraordinarily faithful to the book. And that's sometimes worked great and sometimes worked horribly. Sometimes they've been like, hey, why don't we make some changes? We need to adapt this. We're making a movie. Sometimes that's gone great, sometimes that's gone horrible. And there's been times you've been like, why did you even adapt this book into this movie? It's so different. There's no point in it. Everything's changed so much. And there's no magic balance in this. It's no like simple answer. It's just a series of creative decisions and adaptive decisions, which once again makes all of this very difficult because the existing audience already has seen the movie in their head when they read the book. They already envisioned these characters a specific way. They envision scenarios playing out specific ways. So before the movie is even shot, when they announce casting, the existing audience is judging it already. Before the movies come out and the trailer comes out and they see what it looks like, they're judging it already. Good or bad, they're judging it already. So producers know all of this, and so they've tried to like, hey, we don't want to make the existing audience mad, so they make choices. Do we try and appease them? Do we pander to them? Do we ignore them? All of this makes for a much more complicated decision-making process to try and make a movie, which is already a complicated process. And let's go back to Stephen King. You can take the example of The Shining. For the most part, viewed as a classic film. It takes a lot of creative license with the source material, but makes a movie that a lot of people really liked it, but they like it because it's a Stanley Kubrick film, and they like Stanley Kubrick. There's been a lot of debate, even in Stephen King joining the fight, as to whether this is a good adaptation, a bad adaptation, way too much license taken. A lot of debate for a good reason, because when you have an existing property that people have already seen in their mind, that they love, that someone wrote and created and crafted, and then someone takes it and makes something different out of it, for a good reason. People have a lot of opinions, a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of different directions some of this stuff goes. And so very naturally, that makes it difficult to take a book and turn it into a great movie. Because it's always difficult to take anything and make it into a great movie. Because you got different audiences that you're trying to appeal. And because that story that seemed like a surefire thing, because we have one that we know works, we don't know that it works in this format. And we have to change it to make it into this thing, which is going to make some people mad. And it might not work. Maybe we make the wrong creative choices. So those are my quick thoughts on why is it that it's so difficult to do this? Why do we keep getting so many bad adaptations? Well, because it's difficult to make a good movie. And all that stuff that seemed like makes it a surefire bet kind of become liabilities, because that story that you're changing, you're going to make that existing audience mad. They're liabilities as much as they are benefits. I don't think Hollywood has kind of acknowledged that, and so they keep trying to do adaptations, and some are great, so many are so bad. So as of today, Dark Tower comes out tomorrow. We'll see what happens when the reviews start trickling in, I guess after the movie comes out, and see how well the movie does. I'm not expecting it to be particularly good. I'm mildly interested, but it's just interesting to me that how, even like right now, so it's coming out in like a month or two, I think. And that one looks like it's actually going to be pretty good, and people are pretty excited about it. It looks pretty faithful. Dark Tower seems more like, ooh, we're not so quite sure about this one. Same writer's source material, radically different interpretations, and it's just fascinating all this works to me. So that's kind of my quick thoughts on it. It's incredible whenever we get any adaptation that works, and we shouldn't really be surprised when some of them are bad. What are your thoughts on it? Go ahead and tell me down in the comment section. Why is it that so many book adaptations are so bad? What things am I missing kind of in the mix? Where did I should have gone that I should have mentioned? Where do you disagree with me that, yeah, maybe movies are actually really easy to make? You're wrong if you think that, but maybe you think that. Tell me down below in the comment section. Also, remember, I started what I just said right here. I'm actually like reading my notes off my screen as I'm saying all this, so if I keep doing this, that's what I was doing. But I wrote this as an article for a website I write for called Men vs. Movies. The link's down below in the comment section. Please go ahead and check that out. Read the other articles on there. Subscribe to their YouTube channel as well as the Facebook group. We'd love it if you keep reading our stuff. We really do appreciate it. And if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, ranking videos, and if you want me to do more editorials like this one, go ahead and tell me down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. So thank you so much for watching, and join me in the comment section, and I'll see you next time.